Hi, everybody. Hope that digital virtuosity is going great for you all so far. My name is Eric Snyder, and I'm going to be talking with you today about how my company, Humana, built a playbook to really help us achieve a lot of our goals with personalization across the customer journey. Now, quick thing about me, I am a digital expert with about 14 years of experience. I work at Humana in the Digital Experiences Solutions Group, which is part of digital health and analytics. And my role there is really, how do we use data most effectively to improve customer experiences? And my background has been in marketing before, and now I've moved over to the product development side. So a lot of the products I work on, you might be familiar with, Humana.com, the My Humana portal, Humana Pharmacy's digital experience, and our Go365 wellness product. All part of the digital ecosystem, all on different platforms. And we're going to talk about how that is actually part of why we have started working with Telium in the way that we do. But I want to start really by talking about this personalization North Star that Humana has. And it's ambitious, that by 2025, so 4 years from now, we expect that 100% of our consumer touch points will be personalized using data. And people have been talking about personalization for such a long time now. For 20 years, we've been hearing digital personalization is the future, it's the future. And as we have all tried to do that in various forms and fashions, we have found out that it's not as easy as it looks. And so we've set this audacious goal for ourselves so that we can be focused on actually achieving this and getting there on behalf of our customers. So I think, because the word personalization has become somewhat buzzy over time, I think we should go back to a definition because a lot of us have a marketing centric perspective. And I do come from the ad agency and marketing world, so I get it. But it's not about just transactional selling or customer acquisition alone. It's really about how do we make it easier for consumers to find what they want, when, where, and how they want it, really across the whole customer experience continuum. And the truth is that it's not just in the best interest of the customer, but it really is in the best interest of our business to be focusing on personalization because folks across the industry in the digital space know that when they personalize, that it comes down to increasing revenue impact. And really, again, this goes back to the fact that we are a very customer-centric company, and we know that if we take care of our customers and make them feel wanted across the entire experience they have with us, then they're going to want to stay with us. And one thing that we talk about often internally at Humana is being an empathetic company. And personalization is one of the few ways that we have in the digital space to express empathy and to try and tell people we know you, we care about you, and we want to do right by you. And in the healthcare space, it's extremely complex, and so doing right by them really does mean using personalization to make it easier. And so, again, this is something that we've been trying to do for years now, and everybody's been trying to do it for years now. And I think sometimes people have treated it as if it is a destination or a revelation or even some sort of conclusion, like, one day we're going to get to personalization and then everything's going to be great and we've entered some utopia. In reality, it's going to take hard work to get there. And I want to kind of show you all our plan of attack because we did set ourselves that audacious goal of 100% of touch points digitalized, personalized using data. And so I have to go back to the data piece, right, again and again throughout this talk. Because in order to do personalization effectively, you need to segment your data, and you need to get really good at segmenting your data. So let's start there, right? Path to personalization success starts with data segmentation. So segmentation and personalization are actually intimately related. I want to start off with looking at what most people's setup is when it comes to their data stores and their experiences for their customers. And that is that when you have undifferentiated data, you've got tons and tons of data. You've been collecting about your customer. It's probably in a variety of systems, and you know it's there. You want to use it, but without segmentation, you end up having experiences that are pretty uniform. They try to be everything to everyone, and that's not a really effective business strategy these days. Folks do not respond well to that, especially not in the healthcare space where everything is so complicated. There's so many different players. Trying to be everything to everyone is not a winning strategy. But what we do and what we want to do in order to enable personalization is to begin with segmenting your data, and that will give you the audiences that you can focus on. And so much of this, when we talk about segmentation and personalization, can really be understood as audience management, right? The creation and utilization of audiences that we can identify in our customer data, such that we can activate those audiences as distinct dynamic experiences. And so that's why you see here that data segmentation is necessary in order to get to data-driven personalization. Now, you see in the middle there is a bubble for experience activation. And that means if you've got your data layer here, right, and your experience layer here, how are they going to talk to each other, right? How are you going to get these audiences that you've now created in your customer data through segmentation? How are you going to get those out to the experiences in a way that's going to be effective for creating that really excellent touch point with your customer? And that goes back to, what kind of data back end do you have? What tools do you have at your disposal at your company? And in fact, Humana has a lot. And I imagine for many of you all, especially in larger companies, this is true as well. You have a warehouse, a lake, a data mart, data hubs, right? And it can very quickly get confusing when you're saying, well, I want to do personalization based on data, but how? And so historically, Humana has had a data warehouse. And as you can see here, that was really working well for analytics purposes, right? We could query it, we could mine it, but it was really to help us create reports. And then we got into a data lake, and this is a bit less structured, and also it lends itself to storing large amounts of data, but this mostly serves our AI initiatives and machine learning initiatives. It's not really suitable, again, for purposes of personalization. And what actually is ideal is a data hub. So data hubs are created for data portability. And of course, when we're talking about data in this sense, we mean the audience, right? Portable, addressable audiences that you can distribute out to systems where your experiences live, such that it can really help you target them effectively and ideally in real time. As people move throughout your site, right, and your digital properties, we want to be able to react in real time to what's happening, in particular, if they experience friction, right? We'd want to be able to catch that in real time, offer them assistance before they leave us having had a dissatisfactory experience. So then, as we're Telium customers, and Telium is our customer data hub. Again, as many of you all probably know, when you start talking about bringing in yet another data product, you may get into the conversation of, but we've already got data products. Look at all these data products that we have, right? We have digital analytics. We have our marketing database. We might have an AI that is generating segments for us of interest. You're going to have your CRM data. For us, that comes out of a lot of our call centers. So why, people say, why do you need another data product? Well, let's imagine, this is a very simplified example, but we do use Salesforce, Sitecore. We've built apps on iOS. We've built Android apps. And this is not even, a quarter of the data products that we actually have internally. If you were to try and create segmentation and personalization that is contextually aware, right, of what's happening elsewhere in the journey, which is necessary, right? You do need to bring in that full journey contextual awareness. You're going to end up with 22 diverse connections in this simplified experience, example. But if we use something like a data hub, such as we use Telium's customer data hub, then you'll see that you only have 8 connections that you have to keep up with. And there's a couple of benefits to this. One, we have this consistent experience, right? And the idea would be to eventually get to a consistent omni-channel experience. Though I'm in the digital department, we do want to work with everyone within Humana to make that happen. But the first benefit here is consistency, because you're not personalizing based on different segmentation schemas, but you have a common segmentation schema. You also have the reliability of fewer connections to maintain between all of your different systems. And then you have the speed element that I was talking about before. And of course, any complex, confusing systems architecture diagram, you're always going to be asking yourself, can we really achieve speed with all of that complexity? And so this really helps to simplify things for us. And so in a very real sense, this is some of the work that we have done with Telium. So we've been populating the data layer with a number of different inputs, some of which you see here. We've been developing the audience segments and starting to analyze them to understand what makes these folks different. And then we've been activating them. And so that kind of gets into a little bit of the strategy. So let's go to the strategic approach and really kind of, when I said we have a playbook, right, what's our plan of attack? So we'll go back to remembering the 4 R's of personalization. And there's 2 that I really want to point out here, and that's recognize, right? So when we say recognize your audience, we mean in the data, right? Many of us, especially coming from the marketing world, we're very familiar with personas. Personas are generally qualitatively generated, and they are really helpful for our designers and our content generators to understand, hey, what's the mindset of the person that I'm talking to? But in order to do digital, data-driven personalization, we have to be able to recognize them in our data in order to deliver them the experience that is most suited for them. And so what I like to say is that you want to recognize the customer quantitatively, and then you want to make recommendations to them qualitatively. So there's absolutely a world where we still need those qualitative personas to help us understand how to create content for our customers. But we have to marry that up with the quantitative identification of who they are in our data in order to deliver the experience. So as we said before, this is not a holy grail kind of scenario. This is an evolution. And so we're just coming off of a quarter where we have developed basic segments. These were based in most cases on our best guesses, right? Who we thought were very valuable to us, or who we thought maybe they were having a bad time, right? Identifying, descriptively what friction points we wanted to capture a segment around so that we can try and solve that problem for them. As we move into later this year, though, we are ramping up significantly into advanced segmentation with dynamic segments where members, so all of our customers to us are members, where they move in and out of various sets of segments based on the interactions that they're having with us. And so in any given day, they could be in any dozen of different segments, depending on where they are in the journey. But that still, right, is personalization based on segmentation. So, we go from, this many-to-many relationship in the beginning, right, where all audiences are served by, a bunch of sort of disconnected experiences. And then we move this down to individualization, right? The one-to-one, one experience for each individual member that we serve. And the way that we intend to get there is actually going to be using predictive segmentation, which is something that is going to be new for us. We've not done that before. We've, like I said, kind of relied on our meat brain to define what we thought a desirable segment would be. and then go after that, analyze it, and try to figure out how are we going to create something better for them. I like to think of predictive segmentation as, augmenting that meat brain with the silicon brain of the software and the technology that will help us say, okay, I'm going to tell you the exact action that I think this person wants to take. Now you tell me, how likely are they going to do it? And then we're going to target those people who are on the edge, right? People who might not, but with the right nudge, they can. So that's where we intend to go with it. But for the time being, we're really focused on using a human-centered design cycle in order to really drive the most value out of our data for purposes of personalization. And so I've talked about it before, right, that we need to define who the most valuable audiences are in the data, analyze them. What makes them different? How does their experience require us to treat them differently? Test, right? A/B testing is a crucial part of this process for us, where we want to make sure that we aren't just going with one idea that may or may not be the best, that we test several ideas. I'm actually going to show you a test later in this presentation where we did test successfully a personalization approach amongst many tests or potential variations we could have done. But once we've tested our way into the best personalization activation, it's time to put it on the experience. And then nothing that we do in my group, right, goes live without us having fully wrapped it in metrics and analytics, because otherwise we're not going to be able to iterate on that. We're not going to be able to continue this evolution towards better, more personalized experiences for our members. So once we've done that work, right, define the audience, analyze it, come up with your insights, right? What do we know? What's different about this group? We've talked about personalization. I just briefly want to touch on the other things that you can do, because in some cases you may discover that the personalized approach is actually going to be better for everyone, and we're just going to make this our new baseline experience. Totally a thing that happens for us. And you also may find that you need to reach out to other groups within your organization and say, hey, I'm over here trying to do the best I can with this tool, this experience I'm developing for our customers, but I need for you to tell them about it, right? Marketing and product development, don't always go hand in hand, especially when the product itself, it needs the attention. So in some cases, this is going to involve reaching across the aisle. But lastly, one thing we also have discovered is that some of the audiences we thought were really valuable turned out not to be. And so sometimes we need to make safe kills and cease work that is probably not going to be impactful for our business because we were able to isolate that audience, analyze them, and find out either they're not as big of an issue as we thought if they were potentially a customer segment that we felt was costly, or maybe there's not as much upside. So I'll pause on this slide for just a minute, because I think we often like to start with the end when we are doing personalization. So a lot of folks will see a flashy demo of something that a experienced platform can do, like a content management system can do, a lot of really cool personalization stuff. But then you kind of have to ask, like, where's the beef? Like, what is this doing for my business in real terms? And so I actually prefer to work from the business objective side forward, rather than beginning with this shiny personalization activation that a lot of people are very attracted to, and for good reason. It's very impressive. But if you don't understand how it's going to drive business outcomes for you, then you're going to have a really hard time justifying your investment long term. Certainly, if anybody's been through budgeting battles, you know how that goes. And so what we like to do is think about the business objective first. An example, task completion rates. We use a voice of customer survey tool that we ask people, hey, what did you come to the website to do today? And were you able to do it? And so we may identify a task such as find a doctor, where somebody is struggling, and maybe overall our consumer base is struggling with that tool. So we want to increase that. We'll say, which segmentation lens do we want to adopt? And there's a ton of different ways that you can segment. But for this, let's just say it's behavioral, It's based on people who are trying to find a specialist. And it's complicated, especially if you've never needed to have that kind of specialist before. So we would say to ourselves, well, how can we make that better, right? And that's the essence of your personalization intent, right? How do I make this better for someone? And because I just said this experience for folks is typically complex, then we would like to simplify things for you. That would be our approach. We recognize through the behavioral segment of people who are trying to find a specialist that it is an overly complex journey for them. So we say, I want to simplify things for you, and here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to provide some recommendations for you that help you make the most of our tool for finding a specialist for yourself. I may provide a pop-up that says, this is a very real thing that happens for us that I'm about to tell you is, if you're on Humana.com and you're using our unsecured Find a Doctor tool, you have to enter a lot of information about yourself, about what kind of plan you have with us, and then hopefully you did that right, and hopefully you find doctors that are in your network. But if you log in to My Humana and you use an authenticated search tool, then you'll find that all of that information is pre-filled. We guarantee that you will find, or at least what we show you, are all doctors in your network and doctors who are going to accept you as a patient. So there are situations like that where we just need to slightly change the trajectory of someone's journey. It would be much easier. It would be, we can simplify things for you if you would just log in, right? So that's one example where we have linked the business objective of higher task completion rates to a couple of personalization outputs. And that's just in theory. We could use a ton of different outputs in order to help us achieve that goal of a higher task completion rate. And so what does that look like, right? Across the whole member life cycle, because we don't want to just personalize on a point solution basis. Although I have been talking about some individual points, but they leverage, or they link together, and we can leverage that for improved customer retention throughout their time with us. And so when they are shopping, right, that tends to be complex. The intent there, how do we simplify? When they want to choose, these people are in they are in a learning mode where we want to give them information to help them make an educated decision. Once they're with us, we need to orient them. And there's a lot that we have to offer them. It can be overwhelming sometimes. And so let's tell them specifically, hey, because we know you, right? And I talked about the concept of personalization being digital empathy. Because we know you, we think you might need this. We think because of your specific circumstances that this is going to be ideal for you. And then, as they begin to utilize healthcare services, we talk about this a lot. A lot of our use cases for personalization are around simplification, where they don't know necessarily what the next step is, who to go to. We really want to help simplify the whole experience of receiving healthcare for them. And then if somebody's not sick and they're well, for us, right, we want to give them, again, information to help them maintain a high level of health, stay out of the doctor's office, stay out of the hospital, and enjoy a better quality of life. And then, at the end of the year, when it becomes time for them to renew with us, we want to show them that we care, right? Throughout this life cycle that we've been talking about here, we've been learning things about them. Some they give us, some we can see through monitoring their web activity, their claims activity. So now we know a lot about them. And right, how do you get someone to stay with you long term? It's a relationship, right? You need to show them that you have been listening and that you care, and that you ultimately you want this thing to keep going together between us. So I mentioned to you that there was a test that I wanted to share, and we have a very large Medicare Advantage business, and we sell our plans through Humana.com on the Humana.com/Medicare page, which is what you see here. we recognized a problem where people were coming in, they were shopping, they were even getting to the point where they had selected a plan and like put a plan in their cart, but they weren't checking out, at least not nearly at the rates that we would hope. And a lot of this has to do with our demographic, and Medicare Advantage members are seniors, and they're certainly digital, but that doesn't mean that they're comfortable doing everything digitally. And one of the things they're not comfortable with is giving up personal information. I think it's great that our seniors are being careful with their personal information, but how are we telling them that we're going to be careful with their personal information? And we tried a number of different hypotheses that we A/B tested. And so in this case, we wanted to test if telling them about our data security and privacy standards would make a difference in actually converting for purchasing a plan online. So this is what the control experience looks like. We had close to 3,000 people visit the landing page. And by the way, these are all people who had previously been here, right? These are all returning shoppers. And so they look at coverage, they pick a plan, they get ready to start enrollment, they don't finish, right? You can see that the attrition throughout this funnel is significant. And of those nearly 3,000 that began, we only had 26 actually make a purchase in this small test. And but when we did personalization on the page, and I'll jump back up so you all can see that, right? It's the difference here between sort of a kind of standard, welcome to this page, you know where you are, enter your zip code, let's get started, to a bit more emotional element of this. So remember when I said that we segment quantitatively and we recommend qualitatively? So this is a qualitative, emotional appeal to folks that says, hey, you know, I understand that you don't want to give up information about yourself online, but we can promise you it's going to be secure, it's going to be safe. And so when we did that, we actually ended up with a 20% lift in enrollments. And I know that it doesn't seem like a lot, but for us, you know, even just this amount can make a big difference. Because once somebody becomes a member, and if we're doing everything else we said we wanted to do about personalization throughout the customer life cycle, then we're going to keep them. And so the lifetime value of an individual for us is significant. So at this point, you know, you're probably thinking, I need to build a playbook for myself. And I've included this next slide in here, not that we're going to be able to go through it all, but you can access the deck afterwards. And I just encourage you all to take a look at this. Think about how this might impact the way that you all do personalization at your company. And lastly, just want to thank you for your time and hope that you enjoy the rest of the conference.